I'm Jocelyn Payne, and with my associate Anne Freitag, we present The Life of Elizabeth Hawes. In her first book, Hawes published this cartoon by her New Yorker magazine colleague, Carl Rose. The dreaded Paris dress, every year brought back by my grandmama, always white batiste or pique with hand-embroidered eyelets, scallops, and blue satin sashes. When I was 5 years old, I cut a slit in a brand new dress. I was severely punished, sat on a chair for a whole hour. I was so embarrassed at my failure to make a pocket. By the time I was 9, I took to sewing my own clothes. When I was 12, I went into dressmaking professionally. Style doesn't change every month or every year. Vassar's yearbook described me as a rosebud set with little willful thorns. I have reported on Paris fashion for newspapers, magazines, department stores. The New Yorker was my favorite job of all time. My nom de plume parasite epitomizes the whole fashion business. Smartest women wearing veils over eyes. Great knee display has led to real diamond garters. There is no word in English for chic. Everything chic is French. Goes like this. All beautiful clothes are made in the houses of French courtiers, and all women want them. My mother never told me what to do. When I announced my intention of going to work in Paris, she said, "How long are you going to stay?" I sailed for France, July 8th, 1925, student third class on the Beringaria. I was not seasick. Learned to do my first drinking. I had $300 and a diamond ring made from one of my grandmother's earrings. The family said I could always pawn it to get home. I still have it. I didn't go to France because it was beautiful and peaceful and full of good food. I went to learn about chic. A copy house is where one buys copies of dresses by important designers at half the original's price. An old tradition in Paris. The day a designer isn't copied, he's dead. One day during the summer of 1926, I went to steal designs from Milseux. They said, "We're sorry, but we won't let you in." I said, "You're perfectly right," and left feeling much better. I leapt onto a bicycle, spent 3 weeks touring Brittany. All you can take is a sweater, extra underclothes, and a toothbrush. At the end, you are exceedingly healthy, and so utterly filthy that a return to the fashionable life is all you ask. Schiaparelli. Always designed for herself. She is her own best model. I wouldn't be surprised if Chanel designed for herself. She epitomizes the most hideous period in women's dress. She understood the times, and she responded. Maine Beauchamp said he'd get me work at Patou, Levant, or Nicole Grohl. Patou or Levant would never let me cut up a piece of material. So I worked for Nicole Grohl, an eccentric-looking lady with reddish hair and a face painted by a good artist with a sense of humor. She let me show 5 garments in her fall collection. She had been very slim, but now had a small tummy. A normal waistline was no longer as becoming. If a designer designs for herself, she has as big a success as there are people built like her and feel just as she does about clothes. Madeleine Vionnet probably never designed for herself in her life. She is short and plumpish, the exact opposite of the Vionnet model type. Bias. Cut at a 45-degree angle so the warp and weft threads stretch. Results in a fluid drape that clings without constrictions. Fitted on the naked body, a so-called goddess gown. Madame Vionnet has a half-sized wooden mannequin on which she cuts patterns. I worked every known way that season. The method I took to is that used by Vionnet. France. I felt as if I'd gotten home, because besides fashion and great food, Paris had the 1925 Exposition Internationale des Arts Décoratifs et Industriels Modernes, and, dearest Aunt Charles, I was at Bourget Field when Lindbergh arrived. The field is lit by a square of lights, great sheaves of light in odd modernistic patterns. Oh, there must have been 5,000 or 10,000 people. They've gone utterly mad, all over the field like a flood. The road was a mass of cars going out. I never really saw anything so tremendous. I'm shaking all over. Wasn't it too superb? We are at the heart of all that matters. It seems to have been some sort of new point in life. My best friends are artists. Isamu Noguchi, Mondrian, Jean Miro, and Alexander Calder. I introduced those last two. We pitch in when Sandy shows his circus. Isamu plays the gramophone. Sandy always says, "Get the best out of leisure." It's a stimulating atmosphere for invention. The French love circuses. Fortunate people, they find time to enjoy them. I dressed the many-coated clown, also the lion. Here's the ringmaster and the sword swallower. Then in 29, we put on his circus show in my newly opened New York City US of A shop. I had concluded there was every reason that beautiful clothes could and should be designed in the United States. In her column, A Woman's New York, Alice Hughes wrote, "The Hawes ideal is the classic Venus de Milo as to drapery, a touch of Tallulah Bankhead as to sinuous swish. Miss Hawes constructs clothes according to architectural principles. Not arty, they have a quiet elegance rather than a showy affectation. I am not the roughly white tulle type. I made bias satin to my heart's content, badly at first, better later. I made my own perfume brand before Schiaparelli, 38 periwinkles, and therefore names inspired by Gertrude Stein? Well, perhaps. American designers are better equipped to create fashions for American women. They understand the psychology, live among the same skyscrapers, move in the same tempo. I have been described as practical, feline, tiny, energetic, also cantankerous. Here's another. I'm a small, vivacious person with brown eyes who looks like Peter Pan, wearing a plaid wool skirt and a peaked hat. Take whatever outstanding characteristic you have. If you are fat, dress to look fatter. If you are short, dress to look shorter. I always wear clothes that make me look shorter. I stumbled upon a color theory, matching colors to individual personalities, not the color of hair, eyes, complexion. It's what a color does to your spirit that matters. I show paintings that represent color palettes. According to Mr. Elcock, the painter who developed Quantacolor, green leaves in the sparkling morning sun would be Quanta 1, people who might be innovators, revolutionaries. At noon, Quanta 2, colors would appear a duller, flat shade of green, calm, peaceful. Late afternoon, grays all colors. Quanta 3. Brooding, wistful, nostalgic. In sunset light, Quanta 4, all colors are golden. 99% of people want to know their Quanta color. On this 1940 dress, geographic, I put the Axis Powers flag right where you'd sit down upon it. I'm the first American designer to show 20 models in Paris. Big deal in 1931. The collection includes outfits for everything from breakfast in bed, a red flannel bed jacket, white batiste ruffled panties, to a clinging evening dress, love dream, to supper in a speakeasy beyond good and evil. Though I wasn't noticed in France, even Vionnet sent regrets. Back home, I got great front page publicity thanks to this picture. And I landed my first wholesale job. I used to suffer terribly at my openings. Went upstairs, had a drink with the butler. Now they all have to say, "It's wonderful." When Blanchette Hooker married a Rockefeller, John D. III, 13,000 people came to watch. She asked me to do the dress. Podang satin, long-sleeved. The maid of honor wore a similar design in my favorite color, fuchsia pink. Style has lasting beauty, that quality which gives pleasure to the senses. Fashion is lastingly ugly, displeasing, and degrading to the spirit. Top courtiers are fundamentally occupied with selling style. Manufacturers and department stores are primarily occupied with selling fashion. Dorothy Shaver started the American Look program at Lord & Taylor to promote 60 U.S. designers, myself among them. "We still doff our hats to Paris," she said, "but we believe there must be clothes which are intrinsically American." The important part of the story lies in the field of mass production. Could I find an honest manufacturer? It is rather taken for granted that everyone is out to gyp everyone else on 7th Avenue. My ad copy read, "Is he dreaming about the diplomatic service? Buy yourself ambassadress." 3 days after I showed my new collection, the banks closed. My Viennese fitter fell to pieces, afraid we would starve to death. 90% of the workroom were their family's sole support. I made a fantastic proposition. If everyone had work for whatever salary they had to have, we'd last until fall. Of course, they simply didn't know what I was talking about, so I slashed wages to $18 and my fitter quit. We all had a good cry and got back to work. Customers paid whatever they could. When the season ended, we had broken even. I began putting side pockets in every dress with a full skirt. On the right-hand pocket, a zipper for money. I carry a comb, lipstick, Kleenex, keys, shopping list, my glasses, a few samples of material. My clients now say firmly, I think a dress without a pocket is impossible. Marlene Dietrich, Arlene Francis, Greta Garbo, Ingrid Bergman, Katharine Hepburn, Helen Hayes, Beatrice Lilly, Tallulah Bankhead, Lynn Fontaine. My clients are among the first women to wear trousers publicly. I insisted on wearing trousers for bicycling in France. The gentleman with me felt sure I would shock the peasants. The only person who noticed was an old lady. Her many chins began to wobble as she raised her hands. "Allures," said she. "That's what I call sensible." Women ultimately found the decision to put one sex in trousers and the other in skirts was stupid and ignored it. Over 200 people work in my new 5-story shop. We sell fuchsia cotton stockings, yes or no gloves, false broccoli to wear in your buttonhole, soft leather bags, even a whistle to call yourself a taxi. In the 30s, I realized not all fabric manufacturers had to be French. Congo is made from damask bought in New York City. Alimony could only be rendered in French Rodière silk. Like many another questing soul, I wanted to go to the Soviet Union. The clothing industry had to clothe 160 million socialists all at once. I consider the rise of uncomfortable men's clothes the most pernicious result of the revolution. This is my design for freedom and style. Joseph Losey and I went to a lot of avant-garde theater, in Russian, of course. I'm small and careless, so there's no use trying to look dignified. I now go in for amusing. Many designers work entirely from sketches, leaving the final cut to the premiere. Those designs often fail. I do tailored and sports clothes on paper, but all new cuts and really new lines come out of the material. American Magazine wanted me to design colorful men's clothing. 1937, my first all-menswear show. Men should not be any different from women about their clothes. Joy flooded my heart. Fuchsia pink and red hair, so perfectly, wonderfully awful together. The male model said, "I'm a dancer. I can wear anything." They said of my hats, "Elizabeth Hawes has a way with a brim." And the title of this dress is The Tarts. Notice to where the arrows point? A shoe with a thin, flexible sole constantly exercises muscles that keep the arch strong and firm. Foot gloves, we call them, or pussyfoots. At my shop, you can get absolutely individual clothes made to order for American women. Not arty, heaven forbid, just a jump ahead of your friends. Random House invites you to a cocktail party in honor of Miss Elizabeth Hawes to celebrate the publication of Fashion is Spinach, and a showing of Miss Hawes' spring collection at 5:30 sharp. Literary connoisseurs are requested to keep their hands off the models. 1938 was busy for Hawes. In March, her book was a bestseller, and some very notable people wrote blurbs. In July of that year, when her time came, she got herself to the hospital in a taxi to give birth to her son, Gavrik. She attempted to start her own wholesale clothing business, but by 1940, the shop was closed, and Hawes was working full-time writing for PM Magazine, a newspaper with lofty ideals. PM's bold mission attracted some of the best photojournalists, writers, and artists, such as left-leaning journalists I.F. Stone and Erskine Caldwell. In her column, News for Living, Hawes wrote on rent control, childcare, and, of course, about the fashion industry, gender issues, and the plight of women at home and in the workforce. On the day Pearl Harbor was bombed, her next book, Why is a Dress, came out. She didn't like the title. Hawes went to work at the Wright Aeronautics Factory and wrote her next book, Why Women Cry, Wenches with Wrenches, about the experience. That fall, her husband, Joseph Losey, left. In manuscript notes for a personal timeline, Hawes wrote, "I had been supporting us, so that part was not too terrible." Hawes wrote about herself, "I seldom announce what I'm doing. It usually takes me all of 3 days to put the whole thing in motion." It may have seemed she abruptly abandoned her New York City life. From 1947 to 52, Hawes moved back and forth between St. Croix and New York City while she wrote more books, but Say It Politely, another bad title, wasn't promoted because of Hawes being what she called faintly tinged in their big red scare. The FBI talked to Hawes' butler, neighbor, pharmacist, all thought her a nice woman, though her neighbor said it might be possible she was a communist. Hawes was found not to be a member of the Communist Party, but to have what was called numerous affiliations with front organizations, such as the National Council of American-Soviet Friendship, Common Council for American Unity, Spanish Refugee Appeal, and the National Negro Congress. These words were carefully and laboriously typed directly into Hawes' FBI files, copied out from her PM article. For Hawes' retrospective yet forward-looking 1967 show with Rudy Gernrich, Hawes thought it was time to present skirts for men and predicted in her book, It's Still Spinach, "There's no practical necessity in the US of A for one sex wearing trousers and the other skirts." In her unpublished final manuscript, Now That Fashion's Gone to Hell, Hawes wrote, "By 1976, American males will be as free as females to dress to their personal pleasure." Hawes didn't keep many fan letters. This next one in her scrapbook is from a man in favor of skirts. Though badly spelled, it is sincerely heartfelt. A show organized last year by the Fashion Institute of Technology graduate students was the first contemporary exhibition devoted solely to Hawes' designs and theories, and it included her new passion at the time, knitwear. And I'd like to say I'm really glad to see a younger generation take an interest in Hawes. When I borrowed her book, But Say It Politely, from the library in 2015, pages 254 to 255 had never, ever been sliced open. It was not a boring part toward the back of the book. No one had ever read the book since it had been published over 60 years before in 1951. Diamond Horseshoe was the first Hawes dress I ever saw before I knew who she was. I went directly across the room to it. It was love at first sight. In 1936, when it was designed, it cost $345. Translated into current money, this would be only $8,372, and I think it would be cheap at that price. Hawes's designs and garments and archives are held at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Metropolitan Museum's Costume Institute, Cincinnati Art Museum, that's where Geographic is, the flag dress, the Brooklyn Museum Library Archive, the Fashion Institute of Technology Library, and that does not include many, many women's personal closets, because I am sure her designs are still being worn by daughters and granddaughters. Once I was hooked on Hawes over a period of 15 years, I researched at the Fashion Institute of Technology archives and the Brooklyn Museum Library. The newspaper clippings from her large scrapbook left a drift of crumbles on the table and on the floor. Elizabeth Hawes wrote, 95% of the business of fashion is a useless waste of time and energy as far as the public is concerned. From her final manuscript, I still have a big urge to see everyone beautifully and functionally dressed. If the hooey of Paris fashion could be scraped off, designers would be left to function quietly all over the world. But then Hawes had believed that from the very beginning. Her dedication page from her first book, Fashion is Spinach. And now you've heard. Elizabeth Hawes, the best designer you've now heard of. We would like to thank our executive producers, Anne Stockman, Mary Pedersen, and Dan Everett. Thank you.